Édith Giovanna Gassion arrived in the world on December 19, 1915, in Belleville, one of Paris's grittier neighborhoods. Her birth occurred on the floor of 72 Rue de Belleville, assisted by a pair of gendarmes summoned by her mother's cries. There was no comfort, no warmth, just a city trembling under the weight of the First World War and a child born into nothingness. Her mother, Annetta Maillard, had once hoped for a career on the stage, singing in cafes under the name Leni Marsa. Her father, Louis-Alphonse Gassion, a street acrobat and circus performer, was always moving, shifting from one town to the next. The marriage between the two dissolved into misery and abandonment, and Edith was left with her maternal grandmother, who showed neither affection nor care. Eventually, her father brought her to his own mother's brothel in Normandy. It was there, among prostitutes who saw the girl as one of their own, that Edith finally received something resembling kindness. These women, discarded by society, bathed her, dressed her, and gave her love where none had existed before. During this time she fell seriously ill with keratitis and was blind for several years. According to family legend, her sight returned after a pilgrimage to Sainte Thérèse of Lisieux, an event Edith never doubted for the rest of her life. The childhood she endured scarred her, but also made her fiercely independent. She had learned early to trust no one and to survive by instinct. By the time she was a teenager, Edith was singing for coins on Paris's cobbled corners, competing with accordion players and shouting vendors. She sang what she remembered from her mother's performances, old love songs, popular ballads, and tunes she adapted to fit her raw, aching tone. In 1932, she gave birth to a daughter, Marcel, the result of a brief relationship with a delivery boy named Louis Dupont. The child died 2 years later from meningitis. The loss devastated her. She had so little in life, and what little she loved was always taken away. That pain became part of her singing. She didn't deliver songs. She exhaled her own suffering through them. Her voice began to catch attention. It wasn't classically trained, but it was haunting. It bypassed technique and found its way into the soul. At just 4 feet 8 inches, she barely filled a shadow, but when she sang, the streets of Montmartre seemed to hush. In 1935, while performing near Pigalle, she was discovered by Louis Leplay, owner of the fashionable nightclub Le Gernese on the Champs-Élysées. Taken by her voice and tragic charm, Leplay dubbed her La Môme Piaf, the little sparrow, inspired by her small size and unpolished presence. He arranged for her to perform at his club, had her cleaned up, clothed, and introduced to high society. Her performances captivated Parisians. She sang with urgency, her arms pressed tightly to her sides, her voice cutting through the clatter of champagne glasses and whispered flirtations. It was raw and real, far removed from the polished showgirls of the time. Then tragedy struck. In April 1936, Leplay was murdered. The scandal made headlines, and Piaf was briefly suspected. Though she was cleared, the press painted her as a shady figure with ties to the underworld. For a while, her career seemed doomed. But songwriter and mentor Raymond Asso stepped in. He taught her diction, coached her delivery, and rebranded her as Édith Piaf. He encouraged her to embrace her own pain and use it to deepen the songs she performed. With his help, she began to build a new reputation, one not based on scandal, but on artistry. By the late 1930s, Piaf had risen from cabarets to theaters. Her repertoire began to include more original material, often written by Asso and composer Marguerite Monod, her most enduring collaborator. Songs like Mon Légionnaire and L'accordéoniste began to chart her journey toward national recognition. During World War II, Piaf performed for both French troops and, controversially, German officers. Some accused her of collaboration, but others defended her, noting that she helped Jewish musicians escape and used her concerts in German camps to aid prisoner escapes. After the war, she was cleared of suspicion and welcomed as a symbol of France's resilience. In 1945, she debuted La Vie en Rose, the song that would forever be linked to her name. Written during the war's final days, it became an anthem of hope in a battered country. The song carried her across borders, first to the UK, then to the United States, where she played Carnegie Hall in 1950 to great acclaim. Though her success kept growing, so did her restlessness. She was plagued by insomnia, dependency on morphine and alcohol, and a persistent loneliness she never shook off. She often said, "Singing is a way of escaping myself. It's the only time I feel alive." Édith Piaf's heart belonged to many men, but she never found a love that endured. She craved connection, but often pushed it away when it arrived. Her romances were passionate, public, and more often than not, short-lived. Her greatest love came in 1948 when she met boxer Marcel Cerdan. He was married, but they fell deeply for one another. Their affair became front-page news in France. Cerdan, known as the Moroccan Bomber, was a world champion boxer and the only man who seemed able to calm Piaf's storms. They were supposed to reunite in New York. Instead of taking a boat, Cerdan boarded a plane at Piaf's request. She couldn't bear to wait. That decision cost him his life. The aircraft crashed in the Azores. Piaf collapsed upon hearing the news. She performed that night anyway, collapsing again after the final number. The grief from Cerdan's death never lifted. She wore his ring until her own death and often spoke to him in the dark. Many of her most emotional songs were recorded during the years immediately following his death. Her voice fractured by sorrow, but stronger than ever in its ability to convey it. Despite chronic health problems, rheumatoid arthritis, ulcers, liver damage, Piaf remained addicted to the stage. She went on grueling tours, sometimes barely able to stand. She refused rest, believing that without music, she had no identity. By the 1950s, her body had begun to fail her. She endured multiple surgeries, long hospital stays, and agonizing withdrawals from morphine. Yet she kept returning to the microphone. Her 1956 performance at Carnegie Hall remains legendary. Dressed in black, her arms clenched at her sides, she delivered each song with aching clarity. Hymne à l'amour, Padam, Padam, and Milord became monuments to the woman behind them, someone who knew loss so intimately that each lyric sounded like a confession. In 1960, she recorded Non, je ne regrette rien, a defiant anthem of survival. It was a declaration to her critics, her lovers, and perhaps herself, that everything she had endured she carried without apology. By the early 1960s, Piaf's health was in steep decline. She was frail, often in pain, and rarely seen in public without assistance. Yet she continued to perform, collapsing backstage only to return moments later with a smile. In 1962, she married Greek singer Theo Sarapo, 20 years her junior. Many dismissed the union as a publicity stunt or an act of desperation, yet Sarapo remained devoted, helping care for her during her most painful years. He sang with her, accompanied her, and shielded her from the press. By 1963, her weight had dropped drastically. Cancer had invaded her system, and her liver was failing. On October 10, 1963, Édith Piaf died in Plascassier on the French Riviera. She was only 47. Her body was smuggled back to Paris in secret to avoid media attention. The next day, Theo Sarapo announced her death to the world. As news spread, fans gathered in the streets. They sang La Vie en Rose beneath her window, lit candles outside her former haunts, and wept in silence. Paris stopped for her. Over 40,000 mourners crowded her funeral at Père-Lachaise Cemetery. The Catholic Church refused her a religious burial because of her lifestyle. The public ignored the snub. For them, she was Paris. Theo Sarapo was buried beside her a few years later. Their joint tombstone reads, "Love conquers all." Édith Piaf's recordings remain among France's most cherished. Her voice can still be heard echoing through Paris cafes, old record stores, and modern playlists. Films, biographies, and tributes have tried to recapture her essence, but none can match the power of her voice. She sang of sorrow, yes, but she also sang of survival. Her life was steeped in loss, pain, and darkness. Yet through all of it, she found a way to create beauty from suffering. She wasn't polished, she wasn't graceful in the traditional sense, but when she sang, it was as if the world stood still for a moment to listen, not to judge, not to pity, but to feel. To this day, no French artist has achieved the emotional connection Piaf did with her audience. She belonged to no one, and yet to everyone, drifters, lovers, strangers, the lonely, the hopeful. In every corner of her life, from the brothels of Normandy to the stages of Carnegie Hall, Édith Piaf held fast to her truth, that the soul, no matter how broken, can sing,